What's up everybody, 40 the Broadway Saiyan here, and welcome back again to my YouTube channel with another video on Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming Dungeon Ranking Mako Reactor 1 event that they just announced is going to be going live soon. Upon the making of this video, it's going to be coming out tonight, so several hours from now from the making of this video that I'm doing. But we have the announcement right here, coming soon, Dungeon Ranking Mako Reactor 1 event. It's going to go all the way up until October 10th. And then they're going to be tallying the rewards from October 9th all the way up until October 17th. They're also doing this to exclude any players that are using methods to like cheat. So for those of you that are playing on emulators, avoid the auto clickers and all that stuff. You don't want to do anything to get your account banned or excluded from the rewards. I don't advocate for that. I actually play this on a tablet because I don't like playing on emulators, but just don't do it, guys. We want to have fun, but we want to have fun and we want it to be fair. So we're going to be taking on the dungeon and aiming for a high score. The challenge pretty much is you want to beat the dungeon as fast as possible. There's supposed to be 3 different difficulties, if I'm not mistaken. They said that on the live stream, and you're supposed to beat it as fast as you can. And also, I believe the less items you use, the better. And the elements that you want to focus on are going to be fire and ice. And after we take a look at this announcement, I'll be giving you guys some tips to prepare ahead. You're going to be ranked randomly with a select group of 10,000 people. So some of the rewards that you're going to be getting are like exclusive like title plates and all that. Again, I said that if you don't really care about that and just want to play for like the rewards that matter, which is like, you know, blue crystals and tickets, you can go ahead and do so. But for those of you that want to push forward and have like some bragging rights, you could go for those, you know, exclusive titles or limited time titles and things like that. So score rewards for each difficulty will include first clear rewards. So again, blue crystals, this is going to be a great time to start getting some more blue crystals and saving up for upcoming banners such as the Halloween banner, which we know we're going to get a Halloween event based on the live stream. And they said here, please note, accelerated mode function cannot be used during battles. So I believe this pertains to like, you know, the speed of combat being faster. This is just to make things fair and to prevent cheating. So I totally get why they're doing that, and just to have a, you know, a fair space to play this particular event. So very, very exciting that we're going to get this event very, very soon. Now, what are some tips that I have for you guys to prepare ahead of time? Well, first of all, take advantage of the drops from like especially the Materia. So if you go to Synthesis Quest, start crafting up all those fire and ice materias. I'm pretty sure you guys have already been doing that already, especially for this current Ifrit co-op that we have. We've been crafting up some good, you know, Blizzard materials, but get those crafted. Make sure you get the ones that you want with the substats that you want. I would either aim for maybe like a really good 2-star to a 3-star, because currently RNG for me is what's killing the Materia system. But if you could get good fire and ice materia, definitely you want to prepare for that. Make sure you have access to Blizzard Breach, which again, I've been saying, get those breach materials from the Crisis dungeons, because that allows you to inflict a debuff that makes the enemy further weakened to that particular element, as long as they're already weak to that element. So you want Blizzard Breach and you want Fire Breach for this particular one. Definitely have an off heal spell, you know, on handy. So, you know, one of the healing Asunas or even Cura, because you want to make sure that you survive. Surviving in the dungeons is the most important thing, because you don't want to be, you know, lacking one party member at the very end of the dungeon, and then pretty much your run is going to go to waste. So you want to make sure to have as much support on hand as possible. Now, what are some party builds that you can go over? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the weapons that we have handy first, because I want to point you guys to weapons that have particular elements, so you have an idea of who's going to be the best choice in terms of DPS for that particular element. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the fire element first. So for the fire element, I personally think that the best fire damage dealer in the game, if you have access to him, is going to be Red 13 with his Rage Collar, because this gives him a single target physical fire damage attack, and then our abilities on this particular weapon are actually pretty solid. They give him boost attack, which boosts both his magic and physical attacks, and also boost fire potency. So I like his the best, but if you don't have this, and let's say you have Glenn's Crew Kicker is also very good. It's again another single target attack, very similar to Red 13's. The only difference for this one is that instead of getting a little bit more attack damage with the R abilities, you're going to get more survivability on boost HP. So if you have these weapons, they're probably going to be your best choices in terms of like a fire DPS. But if you don't have access to that, there are 2 farmable weapons currently that you all should try to be farming for within the Ifrit co-op. The first one is going to be Zack's Ifrit Sword, which deals a magic single target fire attack. Our abilities on this one, I would say the boost HP is probably the best one. The ice resist, it's all right if you come across enemies that happen to use the ice element, you're resisting it. But all in all, this is a great free-to-play option that you can currently farm. And also Glenn's Sword Axe is the other one, his Inferno Grave. This one actually boosts attack and then also boosts ice resist. So if you're looking for like free-to-play options, take advantage of the current Ifrit co-op because you could get the parts or even get the weapons to drop for these particular weapons. And if you have access to very hard 1 or even 2, you could run with like some friends and start farming up those weapons to at least get them to overboost 10. It's very, very worth it to get these weapons to overboost 10 if you are more of a free-to-play player. Now, there are other fire weapon options. Sephiroth has one. Zack actually has one, but his is AoE. And then Barrett has one. I think Barrett's is AoE as well. Yeah, his is AoE as well. So there's other options for fire, but the ones that are at the top for me are going to be Red 13 and Glenn, and then you also have your free-to-play options there. Now we're going to take a look at the ice element and see who we have access to in terms of like DPS. So, hands down, the best ice damage dealer is going to be young Sephiroth, who recently just came out. He is unmatched in this, especially, as you can see right here. If you have this weapon at max, he has the highest damage modifier for an elemental single target attack. Not only that, but the R abilities just further complement this weapon even further, boost magic attack and boost ice potency. You can't really go wrong with this weapon. And I'm pretty sure that for those of you who are free to play that were waiting for this character, you likely have this weapon. So if you have this, you're already set in terms of an ice damage dealer for the dungeon event. Now let's say you don't have Sephiroth and you're looking for other damage dealers that do the ice element. There's Matt with the Absolute Royal. It is, however, an AoE ice magic attack, but it's still an option. There is also Aerith with Silver Staff. Same thing as Matt. It's another AoE magic ice damage. And then you also have Cloud, who has another AoE magic ice damage. But again, I'm pretty sure a lot of you free-to-play players or even light spenders saved and pulled for Sephiroth, and you likely probably at least have his edged wings in your inventory. And if you do, he's definitely worth using for this particular event. And then if you're looking for free-to-play options, this one is going to be a little bit harder, especially if you don't really have this on farm yet, but you could go for Barrett and Cloud. They both have access to Shiva weapons, which deal a single target magic iced attack. The thing is, Shiva is definitely the hardest of the summons to farm, so even if you're at like a fairly high level of power, hers is a little bit tricky to farm. I would say that hers is a bit, I'm not sure if it's really worth doing, but if you have access to these weapons and you're free to play and you're looking for an ice damage dealer, this could be weapons that you could potentially consider. Now let's go ahead and go into some different party examples that I have that I want to show you guys for the particular event. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my first party setup. I call this more of a pay-to-play setup because this one, uses weapons from the gacha. I did put money into this game. So for those of us that are spenders, this is an example of a team that you could use for this event. So my first character is going to be my support, which is Aerith. I have her umbrella weapon, her sun umbrella, and I also have her fairy tail. A lot of us, even free-to-play players, might already have this. So if you're looking for a healer, this is a great option. I have Aerith set up with Fire Breach as well as Blizzard and Fyra. So she has access to the needed elements for this dungeon because we were given information that this dungeon is going to want you to use Blizzard and Fire type attacks. And then for sub-equipment, it really just depends what you have on hand. For Aerith, I went ahead and focused on a lot of healing and survivability for this particular build. Now, my second character is going to be Lucia, my main girl. So I pulled for her Bald Eagle, and I got it all the way up to, OB5. So this weapon is fantastic because it has that Blizzard Breach debuff attached to it, except it's at a better potency than the actual Materia, so I won't really be needing to use that Materia. And it also boosts her physical attack and also boosts her ice potency. And what's really cool about this weapon is that the slot 3 of the support Materia, if we could get it to pop up here, it boosts the damage of an ice ability. So because my Lucia is built with a lot of physical attack, I put the Blizzara Blow on this, which will further amp the amount of damage that she's doing. So she's already debuffed debuffing enemies that are weak to ice, and then she's going to attack with this. It's a lot of damage, and I've used this already on the Ifrit co-op. It's a pretty hefty amount of damage that she's able to do with this setup. I also gave her Fire Blow because I also want to give her access to that element so she has it on hand. And I went ahead and for this build, I gave her Healing Essence of Poison. Now, if there are sigils that are required for this particular dungeon ranking event, like let's say you need X, you need Triangle, you could swap this out for that. But for now, because we don't have any data on that, I went ahead and just gave her an off-healing ability. And then sub-weapons, I just pretty much built to help her deal more damage with her particular weapons. And then finally, the last character for this pay-to-play setup is going to be Sephiroth. My young Sephiroth has his edged wings at OB7, so very, very powerful. And then I also gave him his Aonibi because this is a great weapon to complement his damage as well as his survivability because he boosts his magic attack and then he attacks with his edged wings attack, which is an ice element. And because it is an ice element, for his materia, I went ahead and gave him Fyra, so he still has access to the other element that you're going to need. I gave him this particular Ruinra, which is the X sigil, because the support materia on his edged wings actually allows you to destroy more of the X sigils. So you can always swap this out with something else. There we go. We see it right there. And then afterwards, I did give him Cura. Again, I want to have a little bit more healing because as you progress through the dungeon and the enemies get stronger, especially during very hard, survivability is going to be extremely important. You want your characters to be able to survive. And then for your sub-equipment, I just built accordingly to try to complement whatever I have for Sephiroth and also based on whatever I had on hand. All right, so now the next party setup that I'm going to show you guys is going to be a bit more of a free-to-play party setup, assuming you don't have a lot of weapons from the gacha. Now, ignore the numbers that you see here. I know not all of these characters' weapons or even the character themselves are fully leveled. I'm just giving you guys a visual example of a free-to-play party that you could take. So I'm going to start off with Aerith. Yes, I know my Sun Umbrella and my Fairy Tail are not of free-to-play standards, but for those of you that usually use Aerith, or you can even use Tifa if you have her Lifeguard wraps, she is going to be your prime healer. I know some of you like to use Matt as well if you happen to have his prime number, or even Cloud with his AoE healing weapon, which is the Crystal Sword. So for this setup, I went ahead and just went with Aerith again. Assuming you don't have her costume, you're going to be using, her standard costume that you have. But if you did use the gear voucher to get her Rosy Battlesuit, this is what you're going to want to use. And then afterwards, for your weapons, I went with Fairy Tail. Now, if you don't have access to Sun Umbrella, you could always sub that out for something else. But I went with Fairy Tail and Sun Umbrella. And then afterwards, for her materia, again, focus on fire and ice. That is going to be the elements that you want for this particular dungeon ranking event. And then for her third materia slot, you could give her another heal. You could give her one of the breaches if you want her to use one of the breaches. But for this one, I went ahead and used D-Brave. D-Brave and D-Faith, by the way, are so powerful. So if you have access to those and you want to make the fights a bit easier so enemies aren't hitting you as hard, you want to use these particular materials. They're very, very clutch and very, very powerful materia. The next character for this more free-to-play setup is going to be Glenn. So we do get his costume for free in the story. So you're going to want to equip that one. It's just overall gives him more survivability. There's no reason why you should be using his other one. And then afterwards, for his weapons, I went ahead and went with both of his free-to-play weapons that were farmable. So this one is farmable, again, from Ifrit or Ifrit Co-op. And then afterwards, this one was the one that you could get for free through the Tonberry Beach event. Now, if you don't have this one, you can always go with whatever you have on hand. But again, because I'm trying to make this more free to play, we're going to go ahead and go with these two weapons. Now, for this setup, I also went with giving him an ice magic spell because this is more of a magic build for Glenn. And then I gave him Fire Breach, and then I also gave him a Cura. Now, if you need certain sigils, you can always swap what you need out for one of those particular sigils. And then for his limit, so I didn't talk about this in my first party setup, but the limits, you want to at least try to have Ifrit and Shiva available and have them as maxed out as much as possible, or whatever you're able to get them up to. I unfortunately have been lazy and have not unlocked Shiva, but if you have Shiva, use Shiva, and definitely use Ifrit. So for your limits, try to at least have Ifrit, and Shiva on hand. And then finally, for this free-to-play build, I went ahead and went with Cloud. Again, since I'm trying to keep this a bit more free-to-play, I just gave him his standard ex-soldier first class. So we're not going to be equipping the other two outfits that I have there unless you happen to have them and you need them. Now, for a more free-to-play setup, I went ahead and went with his Shiva weapon. I know I only have this one at 4-star, but if you happen to have it at 5-star and had got lucky and you were farming a bit for this weapon, this is a decent option for him as well. And then in terms of free-to-play, we do get the Buster Sword all the way up to 5-star for free, so you could use this if you have nothing else on hand. But again, this is just a free-to-play example, so if you have something better, you could definitely equip whatever you have on hand that's better. But this is the free-to-play example. As you can see with the Materia, I gave him Ice Breach, I gave him Fire a Blow, and then I also gave him another supportive Materia, which is Healing Essence of Poison. Again, swappable if you need particular sigils to be broken. Now, the last topic that I want to cover is going to be the items that you want to prioritize in using for these particular dungeons. I'm just going to pull up a crisis dungeon right here. Okay, so this is not going to be the same one. I know this is Make a Reactor 1, but for the dungeons, as you know, when you progress, you get these yellow treasure boxes, and they drop items such as stimulant, potions, cottages, tents, blizzard or ice cocktail, fire cocktail, all these things to help your team essentially progress further and perform better. However, because they stated that using less items means a better score, which items should you prioritize? Well, personally, I would prioritize using your stimulants and your potions or whatever healing items you have on hand. The reason being is because in the dungeons, if you take damage, your health, it actually permanently removes that amount of health. So then when you go into the next battle, your health is actually lower than what it usually is, but you could alleviate that by using stimulants. So what I would personally do is prioritize stimulants, and then when you get into the next phase of combat, you would use your actual healing abilities to heal yourself back up rather than using potions. Unless, of course, you're at a really difficult boss fight, it's starting to get harder, then you could start using your potions, then you could start using your tents. But I would personally try to avoid using the cocktails unless you want to go for like a more bum rush strategy where you use your all-out damage to just out-damage the boss fight or the enemy wave fight right away and then not worry about taking too much damage. You could go with that approach as well, but for me, to keep it safe, I want to start using the stimulants first, and then afterwards using the other healing items, and then afterwards using the more offensively support-oriented items such as Ice Cocktail, Fire Cocktail, and all that other stuff. But that's how I would personally strategize in using the dungeon item. So then that way you're still using a little bit, but not too much to the point where it really hurts your score. All right, guys. Well, I went over everything I needed to help you guys prepare for this particular event. Hopefully, you guys find this helpful. And in terms of, what you need to do, let me know in the comment section below if you feel like I missed anything or if you have any other tips that you want to share to prepare you guys for the dungeon ranking event. Thank you guys again for watching. Stay tuned for the next video and stay blessed, everybody.